The drums of Nkama village echoed across the palm wine-scented evening air as children chased fireflies between mud houses with thatched roofs. In Nkama village, where the river bent like a sleeping python, every man knew two truths. Fishing brought wealth, but the river had its price. In Nkama village was a popular and wealthy young fisherman, Ekene. He had also trained many young men who now owned their own boats and fed their families well. His compound was full of drying nets and smoking fish, which stood as proof that the river's bounty was worth its dangers. Ekene was one of the most sought-for and eligible bachelors in Nkama, but to the disappointment of many ladies, Ekene was always out fishing with his two friends, Oko and Dura, or at his house drinking and eating pepper soup. Ekene and his friends believed that life was too long for them to marry. They would rather do other things and marry later. Ekene was the last son among two brothers, Ekene and Muna. His elder brothers were married businessmen living in different villages, but Ekene chose to stay back in their village with his mother because he loved the fishing business. Ekene's father was also a popular fisherman. His influence made Ekene popular. As children, Ekene and Muna would rather work on the farm and follow their mother, Nne, to the market than go near the river with their father. But Ekene was different. Ekene loved the river like his father, and his mother was always worried because of the scary stories told about the river. She was devastated when her husband was brought home dead after one of his long fishing trips. Since then, she had pleaded, yelled, and done everything for Ekene to stop fishing, but nothing worked. Fishing made him richer than his brothers, but that was not enough to convince her. She gave up afterwards and would always pray to the gods to keep him safe whenever he went on his fishing trips. As the Harmattan winds began to blow and the dry season approached, Ekene prepared for his usual yearly fishing trip. The annual Nkama festival was approaching, when traders from distant villages would come seeking the finest fish for their celebrations. This was when a successful fisherman could earn enough to last through the farming season. The evening before his departure, Nne packed extra provisions into several baskets, her hands trembling slightly as she walked. The aroma of dried peppered fish filled their small kitchen as she prepared enough food for 3 men. Outside, Ekene oiled his fishing nets and checked his hooks. "Your provisions are ready," Nne called. "I also added extra for your friends." She watched her son's excitement with pain. Then she said, "Are you certain you cannot hire some of the Achala boys to make this trip for you? Ekene, must you go?" Ekene stopped his preparations and walked to where his mother stood. Placing gentle hands on her shoulders, he looked into her worried eyes. "Nne, have no fears. Nothing will happen to your son. I'll be back, whole and hearty as always." As the sun set over Nkama, Ekene set out for the river. Nne stood watching until he was out of sight. Then she returned to her evening prayers with unusual intensity. The first 3 days passed normally in the village. Children played their games, women gathered at the stream to wash clothes and share gossip, and the men prepared their farms for the coming rains. But on the 4th morning, when Ekene's canoe wasn't seen ashore, Nne became worried. By evening, her worry had transformed into physical illness. Her temperature rose and she could barely sit up. Susu, Ekene's wife, arrived from the next village after receiving the urgent message. She found Nne lying on her sleeping mat, muttering prayers and calling out Ekene's name. "Please, tell your husband to search for his brother before the river sends us his corpse," Nne whispered, gripping Susu's hand. The words scared Susu, but she tried to remain calm. "Mother, you don't have to worry. Just try and get better. Probably they caught something extraordinary. You know how Ekene is when he finds good waters. He forgets everything else, Susu said assuringly, but deep within her, she doubted her own words. Ekene and Mona arrived the next day, their faces grim with worry. They organized search parties with other village fishermen, following the river's course and asking at every settlement along the way. But after 2 days of searching, they returned with empty hands and heavy hearts. No one had seen Ekene and his friends. On the 7th evening, just as they were preparing for the worst, Susu spotted a familiar figure walking slowly along the path from the river. Her scream of joy brought everyone running. Ekene had returned, she screamed. The reunion was emotional. Nne and Susu made delicious soups and swallow, and pepper soup, Ekene's favorite, as they all ate and made merry. Ekene explained that they had ventured deeper into unfamiliar waters. The fishing had been extraordinary, he claimed, but dangerous. They had to hide their catch and wait for safe conditions to return. Different family members came in turns to welcome Ekene. While everyone listened to Ekene, his mother had doubts. The festival began 3 days later, transforming Nkama village into a bustling marketplace. Traders arrived from across the region, their canoes loaded with goods to exchange for the famous Nkama fish. The air filled with the sounds of bargaining, laughter, and traditional drums. Smoke from dozens of cooking fires created a haze that makes the aromas of grilled fish, jollof fries, and palm wine. Nne walked alongside Susu to sell Ekene's catch. The fish were indeed exceptional, larger, and more numerous than anyone expected. Customers fought over the fishes, and by midday, their baskets were empty and their purses full. For the first time in weeks, Nne was happy. But she wasn't just happy about the sales, she was also happy that her son was back and alive. But her joy was tempered by the growing unease about her son's behavior. Ekene, Oko, and Dura moved through the festival like shadows, speaking in whispers when they thought no one was listening. Ekene and Mona noticed the change too. Their brother, once the loudest and cheerful voice at any gathering, now seemed withdrawn. When they tried to engage him in conversation about his successful fishing trip, his answers were brief and distracted. His eyes constantly scanning the crowd as if searching for someone or something. What no one knew was that Ekene, Oko, and Dura were no longer among the living. On their 4th day on the river, a sudden storm had capsized their canoe in deep waters far from shore. As they sank beneath the dark surface, their lungs filling with river water, they had encountered something that defied all earthly understanding: the river god. He appeared to them in the form of an ancient man with flowing beard, made of river weeds and eyes like deep pools. His voice echoed in their minds, even as their bodies drowned. The task was both simple and impossible. Years ago, the river god's daughter had ventured to the surface world, but she was captured and was never seen anymore. The river god's grief and rage had been growing ever since, affecting the river's mood and the success of fishermen throughout the region. "Find my daughter and free her," the river god commanded. "You have 7 days in the world of the living. Succeed and reclaim your lives permanently. Fail and your spirits will serve me forever in the river's depths." It was the 5th day of their ghostly existence, and the 3 friends were running out of time. They had searched the festival crowds, they had visited the compounds of wealthy traders and local chiefs, but the river god's daughter remained as elusive as morning mist. Desperation drove them to take greater risks. While the festival continued around them, they began breaking into compounds at night, searching storerooms and hidden chambers. It was during one of such midnight search that he found her in the private room of Prince Obinna, son of a powerful chief from a neighboring village, who had come for the festival. Her beauty transcended human understanding. Her skin held the blue-green shimmer of deep water, and her hair flowed like river currents, even though no wind stirred it. But the supernatural radiance that should have surrounded her was dim, surprised by the magical bonds that held her prisoner. Her eyes, when she looked up at her unexpected visitors, held depths of sorrow that made the three friends understand the river god's desperate reach. Dura, who had been examining the chamber, returned with sad news.
"There are guards coming. Many footsteps in the corridor above. You need to hurry."
Together, the three friends grasped the magical chains as they felt their borrowed life force being drained away. The chains shattered and the river god's daughter rose to her feet.
"Thank you,"
she whispered to the three friends, who were already beginning to fade as their borrowed time ended. The prince's magical protection, so effective against human enemies, also crumbled. Prince Obinna's last coherent scream echoed through the chamber as he fell. Ekene, Oko, and Dura found themselves standing beside the river as the first light of dawn painted the water golden. They were alive again, truly alive, with hearts that beat and lungs that drew clean air. But they were forever changed by their journey between life and death. Ekene and Muna were surprised by their brother's sudden declaration that he was retiring from fishing.
"I want to focus on trading,"
Ekene announced, as if this complete change of life direction was perfectly intentional.
"I will hire younger men to do the river work," he said.
In the weeks that followed, Ekene proved as successful a trader as he had been a fisherman. He would still visit the river regularly, but only to sit quietly by its banks and enjoy its serenity. It was until years later that Ekene finally told the complete truth. He gathered his mother, his brothers, his wife, and his children around the fire one evening during the Harmattan season. The wind was singing through the palm trees, and the river's voice carried clearly across the village. He told them everything: the drowning, the river god's bargain, the search for the captive daughter, the confrontation with Prince Obinna, and their choice to return to life. He spoke quietly, without drama, letting the truth of his words sink slowly. Nne was the first to speak. "I knew something had changed," she whispered. "The mother always knows, but I thought it was just the fear of losing you that made me see things differently." Ekene and Muna sat in stunned silence for several minutes before Muna finally spoke.
"The prince who went mad at the festival that year, the one they found standing in his compound speaking nonsense to MC Air, that was connected to your story?"
Ekene nodded.
"Justice found him, as it finds all those who harm the innocent."
Nne stopped worrying constantly about her son's safety, finally understanding that some protections were beyond her power to provide or remove. Instead, she focused on enjoying the time they had together, watching her grandchildren grow and thrive. The village children loved to hear Ekene tell stories by the river, though they never suspected that his tales of water spirits and underwater kingdoms came from personal experience.